Welcome to the PAFnow BPM Edition demo. Over the course of this video, I will give an overview and explain the highlights of the BPM Edition. First, let me briefly introduce you to the process you see on the screen to give a little bit more context. The data you see is drawn from a purchase-to-pay process. Typically, this begins with the creation of a purchase order, then proceeds to several approval levels. Then the goods are received. Then a few days later, the invoice is posted, and in the end, the invoice is paid for the purchase order. This process can be analyzed by using your PAFnow Process Explorer, the centermost and most prominent visual on the Discovery page. Additionally to the Process Explorer, you will see several KPIs on this page. In the upper right corner, we have the average lead time of the complete process. From creation of purchase order until pay invoice, it takes 29 days, 22 hours, 50 minutes, and 3 seconds on average. Below the lead time, you will see the number of cases and variants that are currently selected. Since we do not have any active filters right now, it shows cases and variants for the complete set. For example, if I select the first variant using the variant filter, you'll see the visual change. Now we have a selection of 471 cases and one variant. Notice that the Process Explorer also changed. Now we see only the first variant we selected displayed in the Process Explorer. Below the variant filter, there's a tree map visual that also changed. Now let me deselect the variant from the variant filter so that you can see how the tree map changed. The tree map shows the number of cases by vendor country. We can easily spot that the most vendors come from Germany because of the DE in the largest rectangle. That means Germany. We also have some cases where the vendor came from the Netherlands or from Poland. When we select the DE, it filters this page on only vendors from Germany. Now we can easily analyze the process for only vendors from Germany. You can analyze not only this page with the filter active for German vendors, you can also take this filter to another page. To accomplish this, just do a right-click in the tree map on the bottom right of the page. Now we'll select Drill Through option and keep the filter and take it to the benchmarking page. Now we see the benchmarking page, which is already pre-filtered due to the drill through we did. Let's have a look at this page. So the objective here is to compare two processes according or related to two different values for one attribute. Right now, it's prepared to compare different vendors. For example, let's select vendor 20 on the left side, who had the most purchase orders from us. And on the right side, let's select vendor 6, who had the second most purchase orders from us. Then both sides will be filtered accordingly. Now we can make a benchmarking for vendor 20 versus vendor 6. We see that for vendor 20 on the left side, the average lead time is 37 days and 21 hours versus 47 days and 4 hours for vendor 6. We can also compare the number of variants in cases between the vendors. What we detect is that for vendor 6, the 27 cases cause many more variants in comparison to the 153 cases with 29 variants for vendor 20. This difference is also reflected by the two Process Explorers. When I move the slider for both Process Explorers to the right, then we see the complete picture for both vendors. Right now, we explored the process for the two vendors we have selected, but this is not everything we can do here. We can also dive a little bit deeper. For example, let's analyze if there are process variants or cases with longer duration. To do that, we'll click Include on vendor 20 on the map, and then vendor 6 on the other map. When we click on the drill down button on both sides, the next hierarchy level in the map will show us we have a map for vendor 20 with long duration no and long duration yes. This means in this map, we see all cases which had a long duration for this one particular vendor. On the right side, we see that we have 7 cases with long duration for vendor 6. Let's select long duration yes for both vendors. Then we'll see how the process picture gets filtered. What we can now detect is that on the right side, there's a bottleneck for one case. The average duration for this case between post goods received and post negative goods received is 355 days and 23 hours. The same happened also for vendor 20 on the left side. When we move the slider to the left, we will see what causes the long duration for the most frequent cases. Now we see for vendor 20 a bottleneck only occurring between post-invoice and pay-invoice. This isn't as much of a cause for concern because it could be caused by material groups with specific payment terms where we had a longer time period to pay. On the right side for vendor 6, there are many bottlenecks, and the longest duration is between create purchase order and post goods received, which is indicated through the very red color. This could also be caused by a particular material which takes a longer time to be delivered. But instead of just assuming, we can make a root cause analysis to really find out whether the particular material groups have been causing long durations. When we activate the PAFnow root cause analyzer, we can very easily see that for vendor 20, there is one material group, J2X, which caused long durations. And for vendor 6, material group I2J caused a longer duration. So far, we've analyzed 2 vendors on the benchmarking page. But of course, it's also interesting to compare more than 2 vendors. For this reason, we have a predefined report page which is called the difference analysis. So let's have a look on that page. First, let me explain what you see on this page a bit. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the 2 vendors we already analyzed before. In the middle, you can see again the Process Explorer, but with a different feature, the unique highlight layout, which is using the legend in the upper left corner. Vendor 20 has a green color, and you can see that some of the edges are highlighted in green. The green process paths only happen for vendor 20. This means, for vendor 6, we don't have variants that contain the path from approval to posting the invoice to posting the goods receipt, or posting the goods receipt to then paying the invoice. These edges only happen in cases for vendor 20. When we move the slider to the right, we will see that there are many more edges that are unique for vendor 20. When we move it a little bit more to the right, we will see that there's also one unique edge for vendor 6. In this case, it is that the goods received were posted first and then followed by the approval for the purchase order. This edge for vendor 6 is possibly a compliance issue, and I wonder right now whether there are also other vendors who have this compliance issue. To explore this thought, let's deselect the filter for these 2 vendors so that we'll see the picture for all vendors. Now we see we have the unique highlighted edges, but it hasn't changed much. Instead of having only the functionality for unique highlight layout option, we can also easily change that to a side-by-side feature in the Layout tab for the visual. Using this new layout, we will see each graph separately for every vendor. So let's just move the slider a little bit to the left. The green graph is for vendor 20, the brown one is for vendor 25, and so on. The different layout makes it nicely presented side by side. So far, we analyzed the as-is process, but from a BPM perspective, it's also very interesting to compare the as-is process with the 2B models. To do this, let's jump to the conformance checking page. On this page, we prepared our theoretical idea for the 2B model for our purchase-to-pay process and embedded that by simply using the Visio visual from Power BI. Let's look at our 2B model. It must start with create purchase requisition, then be followed by creation of purchase order, then followed by several approval levels, then record invoice receipt, followed by post purchase invoice, and in the end, the invoice has to be paid. Now let's click on the step Create Purchase Order to check how my 2B model compares to reality. In the real-world process, Create Purchase Order is followed by Approve PO Level 1 for 816 cases. But for 142 cases, we have as the next step Post Goods Receipt, meaning the approvals are skipped. And when I move the slider a little bit to the right, we see that we still have more variants for what will follow after Create Purchase Order. In 3 cases, there's also the Post Negative Goods Receipt. For 2 cases, we have Post Invoice, and for 1 case, the purchase order was deleted. So, whereas these 3 variants are possibly not too interesting due to their low volume, I could say that it's totally fine that Post Goods Receipt is also followed after Create Purchase Orders in the case where we have low invoice volume. This page also includes the ability to export the 2B model or the data from PAFnow and import it into Visio, making adjustments and bring it back to PAFnow again. This would be quite simple, but it's still manual work and also still kind of a static analysis based on the theoretical model. In my understanding, it'd be more sophisticated if we would use the real data to define our 2B model. This will be our next step. Therefore, let's have a look at the page Sequence Compliance. This page allows us to analyze whether our sequences of our processes are compliant using the PAFnow event filter, and also includes a data-driven conformance check. So let's have a look how easy it is to set up the 2B model here by using the PAFnow event filter. You can easily build 2B models by dragging and dropping the activities that you need. For me, it's totally fine if we start the process with the purchase order, but it's also okay if we start the process with a purchase requisition or the creation of a shopping cart. By just clicking on the dashed lines on the top, we change the lines into a solid line. This tells the event filter that we want these activities to be our starting point. Afterwards, we want to have post goods receipt followed by the posting of the invoice, and finally, I want to have the payment of the invoice being the end activity. We will again click on the arrow to change the event filter so that it understands this activity to be our end activity. What we also want is that post goods received is only happening without any reworks. Therefore, we will add post goods receipt a second time, set it to directly followed, and exclude it. Now let's fire up the filter and we will see that the number of cases change. With this tool, I've easily found the variants that are related to this 2B model that we built. As a next step, let's go to the Process Explorer and notice for this page, the Conformance Check is automatically enabled. Let's click the thumbs up button. Now the visualization is marked as being conforming. This is great, but we can go even further and adjust that. For instance, we can click on this button to see just the reference model, because then it's a little easy to work with. The reference model is built from that green thumbs up that we just clicked. With this view, I can just go to negative goods received, for example, and mark this as not conforming, because I don't want to have it in my reference model. We can also exclude the self loops from the approvals and the loop from post invoice back to post goods receipt. Now we have very easily set up a reference model using this view. What we can do now is use this green button to filter only for the conforming cases. We'll then see that there's 602 cases and 8 variants that are conforming. We can also do the opposite using the red button to see only the non-conforming cases. This lets us very easily detect where the deviations are for this process. Let's select just one variant. So for variant 4, we see that everything is conforming. Only this self loop for post goods receipt is not conforming, which we also defined before in the event filter. Let's have a look at another example. So here we have the same issue, except the case begins differently. Up here in the top right, we can see how high the conformance rate is. In this case, it's about 92%. And again, what we can do is take this filter for non-conforming cases with the drill through function. So let's do this now and take the filter to the value stream mapping page. On the value stream mapping page, we can analyze our process on a case level by using the PAFnow case viewer with the swim lane view. With this, we can analyze where the deviations in the non-conforming cases happened. In this view, we see it as it relates to department. Let's scroll down a little and look at a few cases. When we look at case 57, we see the creation of the purchase order happened in the department purchase. The goods receipt was posted in the department goods receipt, but it happened twice. And in the department payables, the post invoice and pay invoice happened. With this tool, it is super simple to do this value stream analysis for each and every case, which can be very important for BPM. With that final useful feature, I'm going to conclude the demo of the PAFnow BPM Edition. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at PAFnow anytime.